Lowe's knows what makes SpringFest savings even better are member-only doorbuster deals. Right now, rewards members can save $40 on an Allen & Roth Chesler Gold faucet. Was $99, now $59. Plus, save $110 on a Cobalt 40-volt battery trimmer and blower combo kit. Was $279, now $169. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 3/24 while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Entering a realm between the hidden and forgotten, a slipstream caught between realities, a secret museum of the esoteric, the private library of shadows, all taking place in a world forged from mystery and caught between logic and myth. You are entering ParaReality.
Hello, and welcome to the mysterious world of ParaReality, a reality where the unknown meets the unexplained and everything is a mystery. I'm Sandman, and I'm your host this evening. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining me in the secret bunker for another episode of the ParaReality podcast. Man, so far this season, I've had a roster of great guests on the podcast, and tonight is no different. In fact, I'm super excited to talk to this guy that I've got on hold here. So without any further delay, let me tell you who we're going to be talking to. Tonight, I'm sitting down with Mr. George Haas, the founder and primary investigator for the Mars research group known as the Cydonia Institute. He's a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research, and he's co-authored 2 books, third one's on the way here, and 6 peer-reviewed science papers related to anomalous formations on the surface of Mars. We're going to be talking about his new book, The Great Architects of Mars, his work with the Cydonia Institute, and all things related to our sister planet, Mars. To learn more, though, you'll have to tune in, and find out. But first, I got to try to pay the bills, so let's go ahead and get that first nasty commercial out of the way. So here we go.
Building a portfolio with Fidelity Basket Portfolios is kind of like making a sandwich. It's as simple as picking your stocks and ETFs, sort of like your meats and other topics, and managing it as one big, juicy investment. Now that's pretty good. Learn more at fidelity.com/baskets. Investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. Member NYSE SIPC.
Okay, welcome back to the show, everybody. As you already know, my special guest tonight is Mr. George Haas. Mr. Haas has founded the Cydonia Institute back in 1991, and he is the primary investigator of this Mars research group. He's also a member of the Society for Planetary SETI Research, and like I said, he's co-authored 2 books. He's got one that we're going to be talking about tonight to make his 3rd book. He's authored 6 peer-reviewed science papers related to anomalous formations on the surface of Mars, and he's appeared on shows like Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, which I'm a big fan of. The Proof is Out There, and The Unexplained with William Shatner. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about his new book that he's got out called The Great Architects of Mars. And in this book, Mr. Haas delves into anomalous structures and geoglyphs on Mars, hinting at a lost Martian civilization's contact with Earth 800,000 years ago. He uncovers geometric and symbolic designs in these formations that challenge conventional understandings. This revelation merges space exploration, extraterrestrial life theories, ancient civilization studies, geology assessments, and archaeological debates. Mr. Haas, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the ParaReality podcast. I'm really looking forward to talking to you tonight.
Well, Sean, thank you for having me on. I look forward to talking to you about finding on the surface of Mars.
Yes, sir. You know, I have been following your studies and everything for several years now. I am a huge fan of the Ancient Aliens television show. I've watched probably just about every single episode to include what you were on. Been to a couple of the conventions and stuff, and you know, I think that there's something to all of this. And your research on what you're finding in Mars just is very, very fascinating. And I want to talk about your book, The Great Architects of Mars. But before we get into that, I want to ask you about the Cydonia Institute. Can you tell me, I mean, I know you formed this all the way back in 1991, but can you tell me what gave you the idea to do this and what the reasoning behind the Cydonia Institute is, in case someone's out there that's listening that's not familiar with your work?
Well, in the early 90s, there was a lot of anticipation for NASA taking a new picture of the famous space on Mars. Mm-hmm. And they had an orbiter that was sent up there to take new pictures, but for some reason, the orbiter never made it to Mars. We've had a long history of missions going to Mars. The Russians crashed a few on the surface. We had a lot of difficulties getting to Mars. Mm-hmm. And with all this anticipation about going to Mars, I got a few friends of mine together that were interested in this also. And like Richard Hoagland with his group, I had put together a group of interested friends of mine, and we started the Cydonia Institute.
And it's just been growing and getting bigger ever since, huh?
Well, we have a small membership. Currently, we have William Saunders, who is a geomorphologist from Canada. He was my co-author in my first two books, the Cydonia Codex and then the Martian Codex. We also have a gentleman named James Miller. He is an image analyst. He was the founder of the Anomaly Hunters website back in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. We had Will Faust, which is an instrumental member of our group. Unfortunately, he had passed away years ago, and he actually was one that found a lot of the formations that we talk about in the book and some of our earlier books.
Okay. And what does it take to become a member of the Cydonia Institute? Can anyone join, or is this an exclusive club?
Few people have asked to be members that we never got around to accepting them as members. Yeah. We like to keep the group small because we discuss a lot of this, and you know, if you have too many people in a group, it just gets overwhelming. Yeah. And it's really that kind of a group. It's a small research group. We've worked on science papers together, and we try to keep it small.
Yeah, I'm looking at your website right now, and it looks like there's like 7 maybe members there. So yeah, you do keep it small, and I guess it's it makes sense because you don't want just, I guess, anybody. You don't want it to become like an internet club. I get that. So yeah.
And we've lost 3 members. One of the original members, Pam Feather, she was like a historian. She was really a great asset to have. Unfortunately, she passed away early on in our studies. Will Faust passed away. He had a heart attack in the middle of us working on our first science paper. And recently, a couple of years ago, our geologist, which was a member of our group, Michael Dale, passed away. So unfortunately, we've lost some of the important members of the group.
Well, I understand that important to be diverse. So I'm glad to see that you have like geologists and other people like that who are able to give you, specific varying point of views based on, their area of expertise. I'm sorry that you've lost those people, but hopefully you can replace them soon. I think it's the Cydonia Institute is something that I have been aware of for, I don't know, dozen years or so at least. And it's always fascinated me at the work that you've been doing and why you got behind it. And so can you, like, real quick, just kind of tell me what got you interested in what you're doing with the Cydonia Institute? Like, how did you get involved in all of this with Mars exploration and looking at all the formations on Mars? And
Sure. Well, my background, I'm an artist. I'm a painter, a sculptor. I'm not a scientist. I mentioned that in the opening introduction of the book that's out currently, because I don't want people to get the wrong idea thinking that I'm a geologist or I'm a physicist or any kind of scientist. I'm an artist. When I look at the surface of Mars, I see a lot of architecture. I see a lot of artwork. And being an artist, I know artwork when I see it. So that's what my background is. What got me interested in the Mars research was famous Face on Mars. I graduated high school in 1976, which was a bicentennial class. We also had the Viking 1 and the Viking 2 from NASA that had sent to Mars to land. Originally, they were going to land in the Cydonia area where the Face on Mars is. However, because of NASA saying the terrain was something they didn't want a chance crashing into or whatever, they moved over to the Utopia area. And they did get two pictures of the Face on Mars, which were very poor quality. I mean, these were from the early Viking era, but it spurred a lot of people to think that this was a humanoid type face on the surface of Mars. And so I was always intrigued by that. And then, of course, Richard Hoagland came out with his book, Monuments of Mars. And he was one of the first to say, well, it's not a human face up there we're looking at. It's a bifurcated human feline face. It's got one side is very humanoid, almost like a simian. It is like a feline, like a lion. And that really interested me. So this was my background about my interest in Mars. And, of course, in the early 90s, 92, 93, we were waiting for that NASA orbiter to catch new pictures, but they never made it to Mars. So we had to wait till 1998.
Yeah. And then the face had kind of, by the time they got back there, the face had kind of changed a little bit, right?
Oh, that's what NASA would like you to believe.
Okay.
For this would be a whole different show if we had to talk about the face on Mars, because the face on Mars is very complicated.
Yeah.
When people think there's a face on Mars, they think it's a symmetrical face that looks like Frank Sinatra, Elvis Presley, a human type face. NASA has always said that the face on Mars is not a human face, and it isn't. It's a bifurcated face. And that's what's confusing to a lot of people, because they have a tough time seeing things that are split down the middle to be a bifurcated image. Now, this idea of two faces comes right out of Mesoamerican culture. We have a lot of bifurcated faces, two-face images that come out of the Maya artwork. Also, American Indians did a lot of mask, half of a face, which is interesting. But this whole idea of looking at a face on another planet that's a big, huge mile-and-a-half sculpture, most people would think it should be, with the old classic Romanesque type of artwork being very symmetrical, but that's not what we're seeing on Mars. It's a bifurcated face.
Okay, that's very interesting. I've never I've heard that theory before, but I've never really investigated it very much, to be honest with you. So that's interesting to hear you say that. Now,
Sean, if you have some spare time, some spare time over the weekend, go to the Cydonia Institute website. We have a whole category there. One of the on the menu, you can go look at the articles of the Cydonia Institute Field Journal. Okay. There's paper in there on the face on Mars, which goes step by step explaining actually what you're looking at. So the papers are there if you want to take a look at them.
I certainly will.
Sometime in the future, I'd come back on your show and talk about the face.
Yeah, that would be great. Like you said, I think we could do a whole episode of nothing but the face on Mars. So I would love to get you back to talk about that for sure. But we're here actually tonight to talk about your latest book that you've got out called The Great Architects of Mars. So let's start talking about that and what's the idea behind this book? What's the inspiration and what is the book about?
Oh, I've been working with NASA photographs and also ESA and space agency images for over 30 years. And I found numerous examples of geometrically designed structures that are highly symmetrical. Also found pictographic glyphs, like American Indians produced out in the Midwest of these birds and deers and things, these huge mounds that can only be realized by looking, if you're a spacefaring or a flying culture, you can look down and see these. And so the book focuses on that, and I've been collecting these things, like I said, for over 30 years. After my first two books came out with North Atlantic Books, they kind of closed down any type of publication of anything on Mars. Originally, North Atlantic Books, which Bill and I had our first two books published there, they focused on a lot of Mars research. They published books by Richard Hoagland, Dr. Tom Van Franlin, Dr. Mark Colato, Dr. Stanley McGee, all of these physicists that were, reputable people that were in the beginning of this research. They published all their books. And so I was lucky to have them do our first two books. But after new management came in, they kind of like closed down any type of Mars stuff. So I went a couple of years without a publisher. And I was sending my books out. I have like 5 books in the can besides this one.
Wow.
That are just as good as this book, that are just waiting in the wings to be published. So I've been putting this stuff all together, waiting for a publisher. Thank God I was on Earth Ancients program with my good friend Cliff, and he recommended that I send something over to Barron Company, one of the publishers over there. And before you knew it, I had a book deal. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's great. It's amazing how things work out, isn't it? It was probably meant to be, because look at the times that we're in where we're getting apparently closer and closer to disclosure. So this book kind of fits right in with that, that whole big movement. So it was kind of like it was meant to be.
It is good timing. And when our first two books came out in 2005 and 2009, there wasn't a lot of these, like you have these podcasts and everything. It was really the only place we had to go talk about our book was radio stations. Like we were on Coast to Coast a few times talking about the book, but there wasn't a lot of podcasts like you have here, which is great. I mean, the publisher's getting so many requests for me to come on these podcast shows that it's getting a little overwhelming.
I bet it seems like everybody and their brother has a podcast these days. So there's no shortage of podcasts for you to be on, I'm quite sure.
And I'll come on anybody's podcast, especially yours, which is, an exceptional podcast. But
thank you.
I'm out there. It's worth it to me to get the information out there.
Yeah, I appreciate you agreeing to come on to this podcast. Now, I'm not like the biggest podcast. I'm certainly no Joe Rogan or Howard Stern or anything like that. But I do have quite the following, and my listeners out there are they are very well versed on stuff like this. So I'm sure they're dying to hear what you've got to talk about here in this book. And before we go any further, for those of you who are listening to this podcast right now, normally this is an audio podcast, which is what you're listening to, right? However, we're going to be talking tonight about a lot of things that are visual. So if you're listening to this podcast and we're talking about things that you can't see, my advice would be to go to my YouTube channel, ParaReality 1, and look up the George Haas interview on my YouTube channel, where you can see all the things that he's pulling up. We are recording this video. So if what we're talking about is not making a lot of sense to you, please go to my YouTube channel, ParaReality 1, and check it out. If you can't remember how to get there, you can find my YouTube channel link on my website, ParaReality.com. It's all the way down at the bottom of the homepage. All you got to do is just click on it. It takes you right to it. Super simple. So with that being said, Mr. Haas, let's talk about the great architects of Mars.
I'm sure, hopefully, your listeners and viewers see the Great Architects of Mars page here we got up on there on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get started, we'll start talking about the beginnings of aerial observation.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, just so people are familiar with what we're doing, NASA has these orbiters that are taking these photographs of the surface of Mars from obviously up above space vehicles that are going around with these cameras that are taking these things from above.
Mm-hmm.
And just so the viewers get a little history of structures that were found on Earth that were never verified until recently. This is a picture of Cyan in China. The little dot there, if they can see that little dot, I'll put my cursor up there. This is where that's located on Earth.
Okay.
Now, in 1947, there was the pilot that was flying during World War II, and he observed out his window this pyramid, and he had taken a photograph of this. His name was James, and he was a pilot during World War II, and he photographed this, and he brought it back, and it was in the few newspapers. It was actually in the New York Times, and people said, this is a forgery. There's no pyramids in China. So it became a well-known source. They thought there's no pyramids in China. China said they never had any pyramids. This is crazy. We have pyramids in Egypt, not in China.
Right.
Well, this is what I've been saying. We didn't have Google Earth.
Yeah.
Now, Google Earth started in, I think, around 2003, and they were taking all these satellite images and releasing on Google Earth. You can go look all over the place. A lot of people started finding structures all over the place. So at the time, Google took these earlier pictures over China, and sure enough, here you can see the pyramids. There's more than one. There are pyramids all over. There's close to 100 pyramids there. So
there's like 7 in that picture.
From 1947, he was correct. There was a huge pyramid there. So, opening up the book with the little history of satellite technology, with the Chinese pyramids, which were confirmed. I'm sure some of your listeners know that through Google Earth, geoglyphs were found all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And Pakistan and over in the Middle East and in the desert of the Sahara Desert, all these things, people were finding all kinds of structures because they called them armchair archaeologists because they were using Google Earth and finding all kinds of things.
Yeah.
They found pyramids in Mexico that they didn't know about. So what we're finding through these satellite images on Earth is very similar to what we're finding here on Mars. Now, what starts with the famous Carl Sagan pyramids, which were in Elysium.
Mm-hmm.
We have a MOLA picture here of Mars, and if you look at that little dot, that's where we're starting our little journey to Mars. This is the famous Carl Sagan pyramid. These are images that were taken for Mariner 9 back in 1972. This is a 3-sided pyramid right up here. It's here.
Okay.
And the Mariner 9 camera, they're very high contrast, but people noticed that there's a pyramid up there. And Carl Sagan really brought that to the public attention. Of course, this is Carl Sagan. He actually used pictures of this pyramid in his book on his TV series Cosmos back in 1980. But Carl Sagan was the first person to notice these pyramids on Mars.
Oh, really?
They were also the subject 6 years earlier by Gibson. This is the famous Gibson paper that was in Ipsos, published in 1974. And he titled his paper Pyramidal Structures on Mars.
Wow.
So there was a lot of scientists that were seeing these pyramids on Mars. This is another picture of the early Mariner 9 pyramid on the left. On the right side, we're seeing a recent 2007 Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter CTX camera image of the same pyramid. So you can see that the Mariner 9 image was pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
But we're finding a lot of three-sided pyramids on Mars. On Earth, we have, of course, four-sided pyramids in China.
Yeah.
American Indians built four-sided pyramids in Mexico, a lot of four-sided pyramids. But it seems on Mars we find a lot of these three-sided pyramids. This is another three-sided pyramid, very close to the famous Sagan pyramid. So here's another three-sided pyramid. It's pretty amazing. This is all in Elysium, the same area.
Okay.
This next image, you see these two polygonal pyramids?
Yes.
Sean?
I see them. Yeah.
Now, the one on the left is huge. It's I can't remember, but I think it's like at least a mile long from the tip to the bottom. And just this in the same area is this smaller pyramid, which is almost the same design. Do you see how they're both call them Star Shield, and the little one is Star Shield Junior. They're almost identical.
They kind of like starfish to me.
They do, but the geometry in these, and they're so symmetrical, and it's just amazing that in the same area you not only have identical three-sided pyramids, you have these polygonal pyramids that are almost shaped identical. And the other interesting thing is that they look like star forts that were built here on Earth. This is Fort Santa Teresa.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, isn't that? How could you imagine this pyramid, not this pyramid, this star fort, covered in dirt and dust and ice? It would look very similar to these.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's very, on the pictures, it's very evident that these are not like pictures of the same structure taken from different angles, because you can see the surrounding topography, and it's very different. So yeah, and
in the book, I provide a expansive view of the whole area, showing all the pyramids. They're all numbered, so it's very easy step by step to follow. But for this presentation, I'm just putting them, showing the impact, how similar these are.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I did not know that there were star forts that had been built here. That's
on Earth.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Well, star forts were very popular during the Civil War. A lot of the forts that were built by the Confederates and also by the Union armies were these star-shaped, because they're very They have these big pointy bastions that point off. They were also built over in Europe. If the listeners or viewers out there just go into the internet, type in star forts, I mean, they're all over the place. They're pretty amazing.
Okay.
And we have these same defensive designs on Mars.
And what is this that you've got pulled up right here?
This is the next area that I discussed in the book. This is the Nepenthes area of Mars. And we were over here before. This is where the Sagan pyramids are. Now we're just moving over this way.
Okay.
A lot of the structures in these city complexes that we're finding all seem to be within 30 to 40 degrees north and south of the equator. Just like you would have on Earth, most of civilizations are built within 30 to 40 degrees north and south of the equator. So these areas that I'm mentioning in the book and the other books that are coming out, this all within the same latitude. Very interesting. Like this is where cities would be. And in this picture, the blue area, that was supposedly that's the lowest. That's where the water would be. So you can see this is right on the edge of where you would have a port city.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Right, the famous Cydonia area with the face on Mars, that's like right over here next to the old ocean. And then Sagan's pyramids were up here high in the green area, right next to the water. That's just interesting. So this is another star fort in this different area of the planet. The one on the left I call the Starburst, and the one on the right is Fort Henry, located in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now, those are almost doppelgangers. I mean, that's pretty scary.
That is amazing.
Wow. Thank you very much. I mean, if any of the viewers see this and they see one structure that they think they cannot explain, I think my work is done, that I've convince them that there is something on Mars that looks totally artificial.
Now, this one that you're showing me right here between these two star forts are, man, that's, I don't know what to say about that. That is, I mean, you're right. There's almost just like 90% identical. It's amazing.
See this flat area? Like,
yeah.
You know, why didn't they build that? I keep shooting over to the next one. It's just amazing. And it even has the little structures inside.
Yeah.
That has the, I keep shooting over.
Like it was, like somehow they copied it, you know, when they were building this in 1861 here in Tennessee, they somehow copied it straight from what was going on Mars. Now, how the heck did they know to do this? What was...
Oh, I think these are just common designs that you use for defense. And sooner or later, we're going to have one on Earth that looks a lot like they have on Mars. I think the commonality goes more than just, you know, people during the Civil War doing this and then whoever built them on Mars. I think people that built these structures on Mars are directly related to us.
I mean, looking at that is hard to think anything else. That's... I know we're just now getting into this, but so far this is the most amazing thing that I've seen in this presentation. That is blowing my mind right there.
Sean, you're my man. So, and these, as the viewers will see in the book, these structures on alone, there's a whole city area that has all these structures all next to each other.
Wow!
Like this is just down from the starboard. This is a pentagonal pyramid. It's a 5-sided structure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like the Pentagon in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
That's another structure that we have in the same area. Further below this, in the same NASA strip, we'll take these long strips of the surface that go on for miles. And just below the Star Fort and all these other things that are up there, there's this whole complex down here. Now, as you can see, all of these little structures are all connected. They seem to be on platforms. I move on. You see the structure now?
Yeah. To me, it almost looks like some of those may have been standing upright and maybe collapsed or something, like fallen onto their side. I don't know. But they are all in what looks to be a very deliberate area, you know. Like not just randomly placed.
Right. And I concentrate on this area. There's 4, I call them tracks, because they're on little platforms. These structures here are on a platform. These are all on one platform. This is on another platform. These here are on another platform, and then this 4th platform here.
Oh, yeah.
And you find that same thing in Mesoamerican cultures, where when they build these little cities, the cities are actually all built on a platform. They built a huge platform, and then they on. That's basically what we're seeing here.
Wow.
This is a close-up of one I call the crowned kite. This is not natural. I mean, look at the symmetry and the geometry in this thing. What a structure.
To me, it looks like it could be some sort of like ship or aircraft or something like that. I mean, I know you're saying it's a structure, but to me, it looks like it almost like it has wings and I don't know, maybe a cockpit area or something.
Sean, you're not alone. Everybody I show this, they think this is some kind of ship. You know, like some kind of Cleon spaceship that's landed there. But whatever it is, it certainly has geometry and it's very symmetrical.
Yeah, it does show symmetry for sure. I mean, it's. I don't know, that's freaky.
In that track of structures.
And what is that to the side of it? Go back on your slide for a second, if you don't mind.
This over here?
Yes.
That's another mound. That's outlined in the other.
Okay.
It's just another mound sitting next to it.
All right.
It's also symmetrical. You could run
Yeah, that looks pretty symmetrical to me. Yeah.
You can run a line through here, and it's very symmetrical. And that's, Carl Sagan said that, finding these structures on another planet, that, it would be intelligent life on Earth reveals itself through geometry and regularity of its construction. And that's what exactly we're seeing on Mars. The geometry and regularity of its construction. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, according to Carl Sagan, if he was looking at these, he'd think these were artificial structures. This is the last one in that set. It just shows how, as above, so below. This is one of the platforms with a rectangular bar and a circular dome on the end. And the one on the right is from the Johnson Mound group here on Earth. It's an American Indian mound. It's a circular mound and a rectangular mound on a platform. I'm just showing it's, very similar designs that we're finding on Mars, and it's right here in America.
Yeah, that's almost, it's like the Star Fort from Tennessee is almost exactly 100% copied. I mean, it's just a few degrees off, but it looks pretty similar to what we're seeing up on Mars. That's amazing.
Now, what do you compare? An airport? I'd look at that, see what the comparisons I could make. The Tennessee airport, you're saying?
No, I'm talking the Star Fort that we were talking about.
Oh, the Star Fort.
Yeah,
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the airport here in Nashville has nothing. I don't think that it's going to look anything like anything on Mars.
Are you in Nashville?
I am right outside of Nashville. Yes.
Well, I'll be darned. Well, my wife's from Nashville, Tennessee, and Kentucky. She was all during that area. She graduated from the University of Tennessee.
Ah.
Yep. Well, I'm married to a good old Tennessee girl.
Good old Southern girl, yeah. God help you. I know you gotta go through a lot to be put up with a Southern woman. So God help you.
This is the only break I get doing these podcasts.
I understand.
My wife took me to my first football game, the Vols.
The what?
Go Vols.
Oh, the Vols. Yeah. That's an experience. I have yet to, I've been living in Tennessee for almost 25 years. And I have yet to experience a Tennessee volunteer game. And that's on my bucket list. I was telling my wife the other day that within the next 2 or 3 years I wanted to check that off the list. I got to go to a Vols game, got to experience that.
Yeah, and we saw them up in New Jersey, or was it New York? I don't know. We used to live up in New Jersey, and this was probably like 20 years ago. So it was back in the day when they were just becoming a big football group. To a football game. I'm an artist. I paint, draw, do artwork. So, but my wife, she loves the Vols.
Yeah, well, if she's from the South, she was she probably grew up watching the SEC and college football. So it doesn't surprise me a bit. Yep. So
right.
while we're talking about stuff like this, before we move on to this next slide, I need to take another break to try to pay some more bills. So we're going to take a pause for the cause here for a second and let you guys listen to this, and we'll be right back.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger, so I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
All right, we are back with Mr. George Haas. We are talking about his latest book and everything. Man, The Architects of Mars, and that's his latest book. And I'm telling you, looking at what he has shown me so far, this is some amazing stuff that we're seeing. My mind has been blown by some of these images. And Mr. Haas, this represents a lot of time that you have put into this, and I am very impressed with what you're being able to show us right here. This is amazing.
I'm glad you're enjoying the slideshow here.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is 30 years putting this all together. It's a lot of work, And, I have even more stuff, overwhelming evidence that there's something going on Mars. There's nobody living there now. These are all ruins. But there's geometry, and the symmetry of the geometry is amazing. This one here is the elongated hexagonal mound. This is in the same area.
Uh-huh.
And on the left side is the actual NASA photograph, and on the right, all I did was just add the straight lines and show all of the geometry.
Okay. Do you
right next to it, that little triangle? That's a little pyramidal mound that's sitting right next to it, next to that crater.
Okay.
You see the little white line? So there's another
yes
pyramid there.
Do you have any inkling? I know you're not an architect or anything like that, but you've got a diverse group of people who are with you on the Cydonia Institute. Do you guys have any inkling about maybe what these structures might have been used for, or even why they were built in all of these different and varying shapes that they were built in?
We believe these are arcologies. The word arcology deals with these like domed formations, pyramidal formations that are large in size and used as living quarters. And this is where the base is. This is where people live inside of this thing.
Okay.
This is where the factories are, the people, the industry, all of the science research that they were doing at the time. If we were to go there and get inside one of these, like this elongated hexagonal mound, there'd probably be lost libraries and all kinds of information in there. It'd just be a wealth of information to be in here. All the living quarters, the buildings, the structures.
Okay.
If you look on the surface here, you see all this rough area, this grid. This is either infrastructure exposed or there's living quarters up here, and then it has this central dome.
Yeah.
Now, if you're impressed by the and formation here, wait till you see what it looks like when it's compared to the same thing, John.
Okay.
The same identical structure on Earth. Unbelievable.
Wow.
This is in Turkey.
And this is a mound in Turkey?
This is a huge artificial mound, and it has the central mound dome in the center, just like we have on Mars. The interesting thing here is there's a city built on top of this mound. You see the grid here? That's a city.
That's the city. Okay.
All right.
Just on the opposite side of the one on Mars.
Isn't that weird? It's like a mirror.
A mirror image.
On Mars, you have it on the left side, the western side, and here on Earth, it's on the eastern side.
Yeah.
Now, this picture was taken in 1968. It was taken by the Corona satellite, which was a military satellite that was going around the world and used sometimes to take pictures of archaeological sites.
Okay.
If you go look at this site today, which I don't have a picture of it here. This whole side over here where you see the grid of farmlands and stuff, the city is all the way over here. You can hardly see the mountains because it's so overgrown with modern cities.
Wow.
From 1968 to contemporary times, this place is just blossomed. I don't know why. Thank God they had taken a picture of this in 1968 that I can compare to what we're seeing on Mars.
Wow. That's some
So now
good stuff.
we're going to move on. As you see, we're going in a straight line here. We were over here with Elysium, and now we're all the way over here in Libya Mound.
Okay.
The next site. All right? Okay. This is a large keyhole structure.
Kind of reminds me of an
exclamation.
That's what I was going to say. Reminds me of an exclamation point.
Right. Now, when NASA took this image, this formation's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. It's like a flat plain. This is out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And they called it an exclamation mark, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And when NASA releases these photographs, they take thousands a month, and they release them, and there's all kinds of things that you can look at. But normally, 95% of the time, there's no caption, there's no explanation of what you're looking at. They take the picture, they release it, they give you the ancillary data, what time of day it was taken, how high up the camera was, what's the angle, the ancillary data is all available. However, when they produced this image, they had a whole 2 paragraphs for what NASA scientists that told us why this wasn't a artificial structure.
Wow. That's unusual, huh?
Well, it was. And they said, oh, this must have been caused by faulting. This structure, Sean, is 1 mile by half a mile, so 1.5 miles long, by about almost a little over half a mile wide. It's gigantic.
Yeah.
Now, our scientists, William Saunders and Michael Dale, a geologist and a geomorphologist, examined this. And there's no way this could be produced by wind or water erosion, because if you had wind going up and down the sides of this, it would obliterate the circular dome down here. Same thing, that would just be erased. And whatever winds were coming around the top here, they would cause damage on each side. This is very symmetrical. It's a highly geometric formation. And here's the study we did. This was actually part of a science paper that we had published. This is showing the exquisite geometry in this formation.
And, I've always heard that nature does not produce straight lines. And if you're looking at this picture, it looks like the lines are very straight on this structure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even the double lines, you have the line here and then this one here's a little damaged. I mean, we're talking about things that are probably, 50, 60, 100,000 years old. So it's going to be a little damage.
Yeah.
Meteors. Well, this whole keyhole, these were found in Saudi Arabia. Earlier we talked about Google Earth taking pictures all over the place. These keyhole tombs out in Saudi Arabia weren't even known about, Sean. And these were revealed through the satellite cameras that were taking all these pictures. And this is very much like we're seeing on Mars. See, if a keyhole, it's seen as the symbol of death. It has to do with burials. These were used as tombs over South Arabia.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of keyhole tombs all over the world. Keyhole structures. Yeah, and there's a couple of them right there.
Now, this here is another extraordinary juxtaposition here showing comparing the two. The one on the left is just the structure on Mars, tilted a little bit to the west to give the angle that we're seeing here with this same design of a Khufu tomb in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's very, very similar.
So again, we're finding things on Mars and right here on Earth. And again, this keyhole formation, the structure, it was the subject of a science paper that we published. That was published in 2016 in the Journal of Space Exploration.
What was the?
So you mentioned earlier.
I'm sorry. What was the response? What kind of reaction did you get to that when you published it?
From people like myself that are doing this research, they were very interested. The science community, they're still silent. They don't want to say anything. Even though this was published in a science journal, it's a peer-reviewed journal, and this was featured in some magazines, newspaper articles, so it got a lot of attention. Actually, when this was found, and I put it up on our Cydonia Institute discussion board, within a week, there were probably 5 or 6 YouTube videos showing the keyhole formation. Now, that comparison between the keyhole on Mars and the Khufu tomb in Japan, I didn't find that. Someone else did on the internet, and I said, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So this wasn't a discovery that I made, but someone else, out there on the internet found that, and that's like, wow, that really sets a pretty good impression.
Why do you think the scientific community is so reluctant to acknowledge anything like this or even investigate it any further?
I think from the beginning, from their training about learning about Mars, they're convinced through college and all their studies that there's nothing on Mars. There may have been life there at one time. There's nothing there now. And so all this stuff through the eyes of this not to be, that's the first thing they think of. I have to show how nature and this was done normally. as opposed to someone like myself go, wow, that doesn't look right. I think that looks artificial.
Yeah.
That's not even in their thought process, I don't think.
Okay.
I think I'm a kook.
There, and I guess too, there's kind of like some peer pressure, and to go along with the accepted norm, and you're kind of ostracized or looked at as weird, or maybe not as serious or whatever if you take an alternative view to some of these things like this. So a lot of it I imagine has to do with the fear of being ostracized or losing your career or not being taken as seriously.
Right. And I don't even think that people that become aware of this, I don't think they even joke about it with their fellow colleagues. It's just totally ignored.
That's sad.
It is. But, that's why I'm here. Hopefully this book, I don't make a lot of money on these books. Mostly the publisher does.
Yeah.
And, if they're listening, they know they make most of the money.
Yeah.
I don't make much from this. My goal is to get this information out and show people what we're finding on the planet. And, they can make their own decisions. But I think after just seeing what we're showing here, it's just a little bit from what we have in the book, that it's overwhelming evidence. I think you should be convinced there is structures on Mars. We don't know who put them there, but they're there.
It's hard to look at some of these things that you're showing me and then, be able to 100% deny that there's something to it. There's
right.
Yeah, you're putting up a pretty convincing argument. We've got about 10 more minutes here before we have to wrap things up. So what is it that you particularly want us to see within these last 10 minutes here?
We'll just finish up here with the Atlantis chaos.
Okay.
The interesting name of the area.
Yeah.
Hold on. We'll do this pretty quick.
Okay.
This is one of the main pictures of this area. You see the whole grid area.
Yeah.
This is all foundations of an abandoned city. There's main structures here. There's a dome structure here. There's this big temple here. There's another barn-like formation here. If we'll move up.
Looks like streets, like
detail.
grids of a street.
Here's another side by side. This is a detail of the gridded city that we're seeing on Mars. On the right side is these square conjoined housing developments that are over in Saudi Arabia. They have the roofs and they're abandoned buildings, but they look almost like what we're seeing on Mars.
Yeah. I mean, looks like there's this a very grid-like pattern that what we're seeing up there.
Look at the peaks and the broken walls and stuff. It's just freaking amazing, man. Here's another image showing the Machu Picchu structures that have the roofs missing. You see the pointed roofs here?
I think I see what you're saying here.
Basically the same thing. Take your eye a few minutes. I've been looking at this stuff for years, so I've already adjusted the memory. If you step back and look at that, I mean, it has the same peaked roof. This is just another example of this. We call it the Martian Atlantis only because the area is called Atlantis Chaos.
Okay, I see what you're talking about on that now. It took me just a second. I had to adjust my...
You see it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it looks very similar.
This is just a close-up of those three structures in the middle. This one here looks... let's get that there. This one looks like a large temple. Here's a domed area with a peak at the top, kind of like the Capitol building in D.C. And this one here is just a mud-filled building.
It looks very much like a church to me.
It does. It has the chimney, and then there's that back area. And all these other structures around it are flattened. But if you recall, in Japan, at Nagasaki, when they dropped the bomb, there was that central building in the middle that I think it used to be a church or something. The only surviving building in the area, everything else was flattened around it, which seems to be a signature of nuclear explosions. So it could have been that all the stuff was destroyed, but these ones in the center of the city were saved for some reason.
Now, are you implying that there could have been some sort of nuclear explosion there, or are you just saying that there was some event?
I'm not saying that. Dr. John Brandenburg, who's a physicist, he actually wrote the foreword for my book. He was one of the first ones to find overwhelming evidence of Xenon-129, which is a signature of nuclear explosions. Xenon-129 was highly elevated on Earth when we started doing the nuclear test. And all scientists know that this is the signature. If you find this on another planet, there was some type of nuclear explosions. NASA found evidence of the Xenon-129 all the way back to the Viking images, because they had a sensor on the orbiter that could sniff the air. It was also confirmed during the Mars Global Surveyor cameras that had the same things. All of these other missions up there verified this existence of the Xenon-129, which is this signature for nuclear explosions, not in nature. So Dr. Brandenburg, he's got 2 papers out that discuss this explosion, the signature on Mars. So his paper's published. So I'm not the first one to even think of it. And he's a great guest if you wanted to have Dr. John Brandenburg on.
Yeah. If you've got his contact info, you need to shoot it to me, and I'll. That'd be great. Thank you.
So we can leave it at this slide if that's good for you.
Yeah, that's.
If they want to see more, they're going to have to get up.
Yeah, you got to have something left in the book for them to see. This is, man, Mr. Haas, this has been really amazing stuff that you have been talking about here and showing me. Like I said earlier, it's hard to look at this and then come away saying, I know 100% for sure that there are no structures on Mars. There's something to this, especially the thing that blew my mind was the star fort thing. That's what got me right there. And if you've never seen what a star fort is, and I learned something new today, I thought I knew a bunch about stuff like that, but I did not know that there were such things as star forts. So looking at what we have here, comparing it to what we see on the ruins up on Mars, it's amazing. There's something to that. I don't know what the answer is. I think the only way we're going to find out is to go there. And do you think that we're going to eventually get to Mars? And if we do you think that, NASA or whoever sends our astronauts to Mars, do you think they're going to take stuff like this seriously? Or are we going to get reports that, you were right all along, or are they just going to try to sweep that under the rug? What's your opinion?
Well, now we have Elon Musk, he's developed rockets that can take off and land just like we saw in sci-fi movies in the 50s. I mean, the man's he's a genius. And he wants to go to Mars. He wants to build bases. Mm-hmm. And I think we're on a fast road to disclosure. The new administration is going to get us to Mars. They're going to get us to the moon. And I think the public is ready for this type of disclosure. And I really appreciate you, saying that, you didn't know about these star forts. I'm with you, Sean. A lot of these things I discovered, like keyhole, I didn't know there was such keyhole formations on Earth. I learned a lot of things about Earth from finding these structures on Mars. Because I've gone on the internet doing research in libraries trying to find different structures that look like that. And it's amazing. So I'm learning about Earth and our architecture and our styles of design and finding these things on Mars. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing stuff. It really is. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about it. And I will definitely have to get you back so we can talk all about the face on Mars, because that's something that has always fascinated me. And you know a lot more about it than I do. So I would love to have you back on to talk about that.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate you reaching out and having me on your program. Yeah. It's been a blast here talking to you, and I'm so glad that I've opened your eyes to some of the formations.
Yeah, it's been very interesting stuff, and I'm definitely going to be looking at your book and seeing if I can read more about all this stuff. Speaking of that, a couple of things that I always ask all of my guests, and I'm going to ask you these same things as well. Number one is, where can we find your book?
Well, the current book, the Great Architects of Mars is available on Amazon, but it's published by Barron Company. So you can go on Barron Company and order it directly from them. And it just came out on January 7th. Pre-orders. The book's currently number one in new books on Mars, so it's selling pretty fast.
Good.
And, if anybody has any questions, you buy the book. You can contact me on the Cydonia Institute website. I have a mailing address there. There's also email. And I have a Facebook, George Haas, and there's also the Great Architects of Mars Facebook. And I'm open to any kind of questions and look forward to talking to people.
Well, you actually answered the second question that I was going to ask, which is how can people get in contact with you? So you just answered that. And Haas is with two A's, is Haas, correct?
Correct, two A's, yes.
Okay, so you can find all of his books on Amazon, but we're specifically talking about The Great Architects of Mars. It's available right now on Amazon. Just came out on January the 7th, so it's still brand new, hot off the presses if you guys want to check it out. If you have any questions for Mr. Haas or want to discuss anything more with him, you can always go to the Cydonia Institute website, which is Cydonia Institute, thecydoniainstitute.com. And, of course, you can find him on Facebook, George Haas, Haas on Facebook, or Cydonia Institute on Facebook. Mr. Haas, it's been a pleasure. We're smack dab out of time. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And this has been some really interesting, eye-opening stuff. And I can't wait to get a copy of the book and just delve right into this thing. This is very interesting. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy.
Thanks a lot, Sean.
You're welcome. Everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to finish up the show after these brief messages.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
If you'd like to leave a comment about tonight's episode of ParaReality, have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover, or a story you'd like to tell, send me an email, sandman@ParaReality.com, or call the Secret Bunker at 615-692-1170 and leave me a message. Don't forget that by leaving me your message, you're giving me permission to play your comment back on the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow ParaReality on social media. You can find the podcast on Facebook by looking for sandman.parareality, or you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram under the username @ParaRealRadio. You can also find ParaReality on YouTube under the username ParaReality1. That's ParaReality with the number 1 out behind it. ParaReality.com is the home of the podcast on the web, and it's also where you can find paranormal news from all around the world in the Para News section. And you can listen to past episodes in the archives section, all for the price of absolutely nothing. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy yourself some swag in the official ParaReality shop while you're there. You can also support the podcast for free by leaving me a 3-star or better review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. Your reviews help the podcast to grow and reach even more people, and I would appreciate it very much. I'd love to hear from you guys, so send me those emails. Thank you. And before I close it out for the evening, I have just a couple of extra announcements that I'd like to talk about. I am very pleased to say that I have relaunched my official Patreon page. Now, for as little as $1 a month, you can get all of the episodes of ParaReality completely commercial free, plus some other bonus content. And for just a few bucks more, you'll also have access to my companion podcast, Midnight Syndicate, and A Deeper Dive. Plus, you'll also have the opportunity to appear as a guest on the podcast. Now, Midnight Syndicate is a round table discussion held once a month between me and some other conspiracy theorists, and we talk about all of the latest conspiracies going on in pop culture and beyond. The deeper dive content is also a monthly podcast that's about 15 to 20 minutes long, and it's hosted by a couple of guest friends of mine. They will take one topic from the month and just do a little bit deeper dive into it, investigate it a little bit further. So for just a few dollars a month, you can get all of the episodes of ParaReality completely commercial free, plus my 2 companion podcasts, Midnight Syndicate and A Deeper Dive, and also have the opportunity to appear as a guest on the podcast. Subscribing to my Patreon not only helps support the podcast, but it also helps me continue to bring you quality content such as this on a regular basis. To learn more or to join, just go on over to patreon.com/ParaReality. That's patreon.com/ParaReality. And for more big news, I am also happy to announce that the ParaReality podcast will be returning to the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival this May. I am really excited to have been invited back as a podcaster again this year. I had such a great time meeting everyone and collecting all their stories last year, and I can't wait to go back and do it again. So you need to join us for the ultimate legendary family reunion at the 2025 Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival in Townsend, Tennessee on May the 3rd, 2025. That is the first Saturday in May in beautiful Townsend, Tennessee in the Great Smoky Mountains, the peaceful side of the Smokies. Bigfoot is bringing along some of his special guests, his legendary cousins Yeti, Mothman, Dogman, and more. You'll get to enjoy a day filled with live music, tasty food trucks, and unique vendors offering collectibles celebrating these legendary figures. Plus, you'll get to watch epic competitions, hear from famous Bigfoot researchers, and dive deep into the mysteries of these mythical creatures. It's family-friendly, pet-friendly, so bring the whole family, bring your pets. This is going to be a blast. It's all outdoors, rain or shine. They're going to have it. It rained at the first half or first part of it last year, and they still had it. So rain or shine, it's still going to be going on, and it is a lot of fun. It is a very unique conference. They don't call it a conference, it's a festival because there's so much going on. It is a wonderful time and a great family-friendly event. If you've always wanted to go to the Smoky Mountains and you never have, but you just need an excuse, this is it. Like I said, it's going to be in beautiful Townsend, Tennessee on May the 3rd, 2025. It's on the peaceful side of the Smokies. I'll have my tent set up in the podcasters area again this year. So if you're going to be there and you've had some sort of unusual experience of any kind, not just Sasquatch, but if you've had any type of unusual experience, stop by my tent and tell me your story, and you can get it on the podcast. Or maybe just stop by and say hi. I'll have a little bit of swag there you can buy, but I mainly am going to be there collecting stories. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're going to be there and you've got a story to tell of any kind of unusual story, it can be Bigfoot, aliens, UFOs, chupacabra, ghosts, hauntings, anything that's unusual, I want your story. So find my tent on Podcasters Row, the ParaReality tent. Find me, stop by, tell me your story, and get it on the podcast. Or if you don't have a story and you just want to stop by and say hi because you listen to the podcast, stop by, say hi, and I'd love to hear from you. To learn more about the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival or to purchase tickets, head on over to thebigfest.com. That's thebigfest.com. Everyone, I hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode of ParaReality. The next episode is going to drop on Friday, April the 4th, 2025 at 8 p.m. Central U.S. time. So make sure you turn on tune in and find out. I hope this podcast opened up your mind to new ways of thinking, expands your consciousness, and produces a change in the way you see the world. If you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Hope you have a great evening, and I will see you again in a couple of weeks. Good night, everybody.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.
Hey, it's not over. Thanks for sticking around. I got something to tell you. Do you want to be a member of the Secret Sanctum? Well, if you do, there's only one way to do that. Somewhere on ParaReality.com is a link hidden in my website. And if you can find that link and click on it, you'll be granted access to the secret bunker, and you'll become a member of the Secret Sanctum. It's 100% free. It's not going to cost you anything. And once you become a member, you'll have access to some secret audio files and secret documents, some of which are exclusive only to ParaReality and the members of the Secret Sanctum. You'll also get a free ParaReality Secret Sanctum t-shirt. Just fill out the form and let me know what size you are, where you're located in your name, and I'll get that right out to you. So if you want to be a member of the ParaReality Secret Sanctum and have access to the secret bunker, find the link.